Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Freelance Monocle. In this episode, we have a really amazing chat with studio owner Yann Lhomme from the studio Thinkmojo based in San Francisco. We chat about his experience working with big brands in the tech space, primarily in Silicon Valley. We talk about how motion design has changed over the last 10 to 15 years and how much more integral it has become for brands to include in their marketing and branding. We have some really nice reflective and nostalgic moments of our industry, and we also talk about where he sees our industry moving with the emergence of AI. I think this is a really great way to give some perspective on the uncertainty and how AI will affect our industry. So buckle up, this is a really great chat. Let's go check it out.
Hey, Jan, how's it going?
Very well. How about you?
Not too bad. Thanks so much for making the time to chat with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks for the invite. Really looking forward to chatting up.
Absolutely. So just to kick off the conversation, can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, sorry. I'm Yann, basically a French-born founder that sort of traded croissants for keyframes over here. But yeah, I'm the co-founder of a studio, motion and video studio called Thinkmojo. And we're located in San Francisco, so Silicon Valley, and we help a lot of tech brands market their products and their value to the world.
Yeah, and if for anyone who isn't familiar with your work, definitely will be sure to provide the links, but you definitely do some amazing work. So I really want to commend you on that and encourage everyone to check that out. But so just to take us back though, I mean, how did Thinkmojo and your studio come about?
Yeah, so we've been around for a little over 10 years, really, and it started very humble, just me and my brother, full-time jobs, in software companies. And at the time, there was we were both doing a little bit of freelancing work on the side, like web design, graphic design, that kind of stuff. But we were noticing that it was kind of like the beginning of the tech resurgence. Like the iPhone had been introduced just a few years ago. There's this new wave of really cool startup doing awesome stuff. And at the same time, there were some new tools coming out in the market or getting popularized, like After Effects and stuff like that. And so at the time, we were working with a few startups and or using apps, that we really loved, but thought that the way they were presenting the software was really bad, like presented poorly. Like I was like, nobody gets this. Like once you get it, it's like, oh my God, this app or this software is really awesome. But most of the time, it's just like people will be turned off by it because it just looks so dry and then hard to digest or even understand. And it was like, this is a shame. Like if only they actually presented it well, a lot more people would get it and think this is super cool and sign up or try it out, So because we were in the freelancing world, and we had a couple gigs, we got opportunities to actually help with that. So a couple of clients said hey, you actually have a really cool product. And I think a lot of people would love it if you were able to get it across better. So we offered to make a video at the time using After Effects. And that was kind of a real revelation for us because the idea of being able to do something really cool, almost like something you would see on TV, with just a team of two and a laptop and a piece of software was, mind blowing at the time. Because if you have to put yourself back in the context of 15 years ago, a lot of the advertising world, any commercial video you would see at the time, it's stuff you would see on TV. So produced by bigger brands, it typically would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, to do anything remotely cool, But when that new wave of startups and those new wave of tools came out, all of a sudden you were kind of able to match that scope, that type of quality with just a very small team and again the right piece of software. And just being able to do that just kind of opened up the door to a lot of opportunities, and all of a sudden. So the reason why I mentioned the startups is because some really smart companies kind of figured that out. Airbnb at the time and a few others thinking they didn't necessarily have the money to do a big, broadcast commercial or anything like this, but they figured out okay, maybe we could use video in a different way. It's not going to be on TV. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Vimeo. It's going to be on social. All that stuff was really new at the time, And so we sort of participated in that, helped a few startups with making their own videos and using video in that new way and being able to actually produce content or like ads or product, videos that were almost as good or as cool as something you would see on TV, but produced by just a couple of guys for, just a few hundred or thousands of dollars compared to maybe millions of dollars, So this is kind of like how it started at the time. We figured, okay, there's actually maybe an opportunity here, and maybe this is the start of a new business. And we just love the possibilities. My co-founder, who also is my brother, I should probably call him my brother, and decided, like there's so many cool stuff we could do, and there's a lot of brands that could benefit from this, and that let's go full steam. Let's make a business out of it.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. Okay. So then that transition though, when you and brother were freelancing and your staff, but then, I mean, how was that transition from starting the studio? I mean, what did that look like?
Yeah. It was super slow. It's funny because it feels kind of fast now, but in reality it was very progressive because we really started from scratch. Like we had no contacts. As I said, this was kind of a new format, a new way to approach video. So it wasn't really done that way. We didn't come from like agency world or anything like that. So we just came more from the tech world and saw an opportunity. So at first it was just he and I doing it for a couple startups on the cheap. Did it maybe 2 or 3 times within the first year through some opportunities, and then we started kind of zeroing on that, sort of branding it that way to a few more clients, explaining like we could use video, we could do something super cool for your software or your app. And then slowly we started getting, word of mouth at the same time. So again, this is like in the early 2010s. So there were a couple other studios doing that. One of them at the time was Epifeo. Maybe you've heard of them. They were kind of the bigger one that sort of introduced this idea of like the explainer type video. And so I think Google had the first big one for, I don't know if you remember this product. I think it was called Wave. It was impossible to understand. Like nobody really could get the product. They abandoned it. But at the time, like they had Epifeo made this cool little explainer video to come out, get the idea of the product across, and that sort of like went viral. And so they did a bunch more for a bunch of other startups. We were entering the scene at that same time, and a few others like Sandwich Video and others came in as well. And yeah, you make 1 or 2 here and there. It resonates within the startup community, and all of a sudden somebody sees it, also wants one, and you start making one. You slowly increase your rates. And, after maybe about a year, I think we got our first deal with a bigger brand. That was eBay at the time. And then that was really, once we got that gig, then everything kind of went full steam after that. I remember when we got the call from the request from eBay. To us, this was incredible because we just came from nowhere. We had no contacts. We just made a couple of videos here and there, and then all of a sudden, like a big brand comes to you and say, like, "Hey, we like what you're doing. Could you do it for us?" And that was, we figured, oh my God, like we could actually do this for those kind of brands, and that just changed everything. That really is when we decided, like, yeah, let's make a business and do this thing full time and take it full steam. But that was, it took probably about a year to lift off the ground. After that, it just was he and I for maybe a couple of years. We started working with freelancers because we were at that point, we were starting to get too many requests and too many projects to handle just by ourselves. So we were starting to collaborate, bringing out freelancers, within the teams, collaborating that way. And at that point, we started making our first hires. So yeah, it really took us a couple of years to really make it look like that was sort of a business. Make a first hire, and once you've made your first hire, then it goes faster and faster in a way. And then fast forward to now, and then we're not gigantic, but we're like a big dozen people in the company, full timers, and of course we work with a lot of freelancers, a lot of external talent as well. So if you add those into the mix, then that would be even bigger. But yeah, this is kind of how it started and where we are at now.
Oh, wow. That's really cool to hear about eBay too. Yeah, that's great. And I guess that's one thing that I'm always curious about as far as a business owner. I mean, at what point is it justified to bring on someone Because I wonder what that metric is as far as, I know you hire on freelancers, but at one point you just say, hey, we just could probably use someone on staff.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it really depends on the studio. For us specifically, it was just we were just a duo, like my brother and I, and we were doing everything, A to Z, from like script writing to storyboarding, design motion, and then the motion and everything else. And the first first person that we really hired was our script writer at the time, who we started dedicating the script writing because we needed to go faster and better. And I'm not a native speaker, and it was just going to be easier that way. That was the first hire, and it just felt right because of the task, delegation, like your genius or whatever you're really good at. If you can delegate that and focus on what you know how to do best, that I would strongly encourage you to do that. But other than that, then the next freelancers or hires would definitely be on the design or animation side, because of a bandwidth thing. Like, okay, we were only 2 people in the business, and if you work on like 5 projects, that's just not enough hands to push the pixels, so that you need more people. So bandwidth will probably be the number one, if you have enough demand for it. And then the second one is, again, as you start to be a little bit more strategic with the growth of your business, then it's really more about what kind of skills do we need to bring into the team that has value for us as a business and for our clients. So that one is a big payoff in the long run.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm always curious to hear how people justify bringing staff on. But yeah, probably good to know.
Yeah, and sometimes it's also about not just the bandwidth, but if there's a particular style or type of project that you haven't quite done. Like for us, we were pretty good in vector type motion design, but like we've never done cell animation or maybe other kind of techniques that weren't our forte. And that's where, like, okay, well, let's go to somebody who's really specialized and can do that better than we can. That's another way to look at it. Oftentimes, in business, you're sort of encouraged to hire people that are smarter or more skilled at something than you are. And usually that's how you assemble the best teams,
Yeah, okay. So then, since starting the studio in the 2010 era time, you said, what have you noticed has changed in the industry? I know a lot has happened in between that time, but what have you seen change as far as like the type of work or maybe the type of clients? Like what kind of stuff have you seen?
Yeah, it's but 10 years is not that long, but especially in the space we operate in, which is Silicon Valley tech, is just like enormous. Like, if you think back, I think the iPhone was introduced in 2008, something like that. And, it took a couple of years to really take off, full swing, but then it completely changed the game on so many levels, along with many other startups like Uber and Airbnb and all those kind of companies. So just the landscape, like the business landscape, has completely changed, and the consumer habits have completely changed, within that time. So the way you approach marketing to needs is completely different than it was like 15 years ago and the 15 years prior to that. From an industry standpoint, I think we were at an inflection point when we started, as I said, with traditionally you had those big studios producing multi-million-dollar commercials on TV, and that's kind of the only videos you would sort of see that would look good. Other than that, you would have some like kind of like lame corporate type videos that didn't really look great, anything underneath that. And so to produce those videos, you would either need like a really big team or like some really expensive software, like, Flames and stuff like that. But then came along, Adobe, After Effects, they were there, but it really started to be popular and sort of adopted. And that completely changed the game. So all of a sudden, you could start seeing design teams or actually people making those kind of videos, like motion design, using motion design for brands and marketing and in a way that wasn't used before. And it started with a lot of innovative, startup companies in Silicon Valley that started adapting this approach to video, and do studios like us and Buck and a few others. And then within the span of the 10 years, this went from like the small innovative startups experimenting with new techniques and new ways to use video to fast forward to now, motion design being used across brands, across global organizations, all the way, through the entire funnel of marketing, from like big marketing campaigns on TV to whatever onboarding videos to social media videos to it's across the board on so many touch points. So that is very new, and I think it took about 10 years to go from there to where we are now, and to be completely, I guess, marketed.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when you think about it, before it used to be, the big commercials that were so expensive that were typically done through ad agencies. And nowadays it seems like there's mobile devices and screens everywhere. And it feels like a lot of where the ad eyeballs are on social media. Like TV, I feel like it's just a format that I guess isn't as common.
Well, you're completely right. And then I created that shift too, like, because even the media landscape has completely changed, right? Because the same thing, social media started around that time. So now it's completely fragmented. It wasn't there, 15 years ago in the same way that it is now. So like the way the diffusion and distribution channels have completely changed. That's another way that things have changed from back then. And something else I was going to say, same thing, in terms of like the budgets and the way business is conducted, like there's been a shift between a lot of the big money for production used to go to TV networks, to produce big broadcast commercials, but also like TV shows, stuff like that. But the audiences, the numbers have been going down because of social media going up, right? So a lot of the budgets for marketing production has been shifting from like traditional broadcast scopes to being injected more into the fragmented social media landscape, and a lot of it is less on TV, identities, and more directly from the brands themselves. Like a lot of brands are not just producing the content on their own, and so the relationship between the studios making the content and then the customers has definitely changed. Like I was listening to an interview from one of the I think the Buck founders a few weeks ago, and I think that's a great example where Buck, I think 10 years ago, I think 80% of their budgets were coming from agencies and TV type of commercials, and then now it's just like reverse, where it's 80% comes directly from the brand themselves, and then not through the traditional agencies, the traditional ways of doing things. So there's definitely be like a complete shift in terms of the business relationships, in the industry.
Oh, got it. So it used to be the agencies that works with studios, but now it's just going direct to the brand.
Yeah. Traditionally, the way it was set up is that you would have the big brand customer. They would work with an agency, a creative agency or a media agency that would kind of come up with the campaign concepts, manage all the media distribution and all that stuff, and then those guys would contract out a production house like Buck or a studio to kind of execute part of the campaigns, right? But now a lot of the brands are smart. They've become much more savvy about strategy, and they're thinking like, wait a minute, maybe we don't need to go through an agency to come up with our creative ideas and campaigns, and maybe we could just do that internally, and we'll go straight to the studio to actually help us produce that idea. So if you look at a company like Buck, for example, it used to be that 80% of the work would be coming from the middleman agency coming up with a concept on behalf of the original brands. And then maybe about 20% of the work would come from the brand directly. But now it's reverse. It's just like the Buck works directly with the brand like 80% of the time, and maybe 20% of the time they work with traditional creative agencies, in between. So that shift, has been happening, I think, everywhere in the advertising industry, and definitely as for us it's different because Thinkmojo, we started directly with brand direct, so we never worked through agencies, so it's a little bit different. But it's been funny to witness that shift though, because when we started it was very uncommon to do that and to work with brands directly the way we did, but now it's now is kind of a given. Like most studios do that, and probably it's the way to approach business. For now.
Interesting. So then how would you, so, okay, so kind of acknowledging that and hearing how now brands are working directly with studios, I mean, what does that mean for the ad agencies? I mean, because it seems like, from my perspective, your studio almost seems like an ad agency because you're saying you do script writing, you do that. And traditionally, I associate that with stuff being done at an agency. Where does the agency fit in today's world?
Yeah, so if you've kept up with the news a little bit, you'll see that the big advertising business is a little bit struggling right now. Like the traditional agencies are, the money's going down. They've been kind of struggling, trying to figure out a way to inject a little bit more life into their accounts because of that issue. For us, we're part of the batch or the new wave of companies where we're sort of doing kind of both at the same time. Yes, we work directly with the brands. We are an agency in some ways in that we come up with ideas, we come up with the campaigns, creatives, and then we go and execute. But traditionally, it used to be separate. You would have one entity coming up with a strategy and then the big ideas, and then you would have one entity do the execution, the production, right? We're part of a new wave where we do both. We work with the brand directly. We're going to come up between them and us. We're going to come up with a strategy, the big idea, and then we're going to go all the way through execution. So it's sort of a hybrid, if you will. But a lot of traditional advertising agencies, they're not set up that way, and they have to compete against companies like us that can actually do that.
Right. Interesting. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, it's definitely a big shift, something that I've kind of noticed, but you'd be more privy to since, you're on that front. So, yeah, so as far as the motion design, and I know, whenever we think of motion design and we think of, some of the beautiful work that we see out there, Buck is always at the top of that list. But people always love the flashy, beautiful things, but there's more to it, obviously, as you would be able to elaborate on a little bit more. But as far as motion design, how does motion design play into shaping a brand beyond just looking good?
Yeah, in so many different ways. Actually, it's been really cool to be part of that movement in a way because, again, motion design, the way it is now, it's kind of new. Newish. It's been about 10 years of getting better and sort of coming to this maturity level, I would say. Again, at the time, like nobody was doing motion design the way it's done now. And then now you look at big brands and it's across all of the brand assets, in a way. 2015, you would have maybe companies asking for a design system, illustration system, stuff like that. And then now you fast forward to now, and then all brands are asking you for a motion design system. They want to add motion because of the way that their content is distributed throughout so many different type of touch points. Motion, and then, okay, let me backtrack a little bit. For almost all of the modern touch points right now are video driven, meaning like a lot of interactions you have with a brand, unless it's on the product physically directly. A lot of the advertising you see is either on TV, on streaming channels, within your app, within social media. So a lot of it is kind of video first, right? So video is a huge component of brand distribution. It's very fragmented, meaning there's the way you can experience the brand on TikTok is different from what you can experience on Facebook, which is different from what you can experience on watching a commercial from them on TV or on a streaming service. So that's one of the challenges from the brands. They need to be able to reach out their audiences through a lot of different channels. Every channel has its own style expectations, but yet they still need to be consistent in the way they do it so that it feels like it's the same brand, right? And that's where I think motion can bring a lot of value, because if you are savvy about motion, you've been strategic about how you build motion for your brand within your brand guidelines, then you're able to adapt the way the brand looks and feel and moves for each channel, but still make it feel like it's part of the same universe to save the same brand. I think Mojo would like to say that it's the motion is sort of the body language of the brand. You're going to have a different body language depending on who you're talking to and what channel you go through, but it still has to feel like it's you, right? So it's kind of the same thing with motion. And I think for the brands that really understand that, it makes a it's a big payoff. Like it makes a big difference in terms of the kind of return they get on their investments from a branding perspective.
Okay, sweet. That's good to know. So just curious, I mean, for those motion, yeah, for sure. That's the difference communication style. And like you said, it has to be like this type of body language for the brand. I mean, for a project like that, to me, it seems like it'd be a massive effort. I mean, what's like a timeline for a project like that?
Yeah, I mean, usually you don't do that like overnight. If you're really thinking about motion as a strategic asset for your brand, it's going to be months of work, and typically it's tied to your brand identity as well. You know, brands spend millions of dollars on like their logos and brand identity, has a look, their color palette, their design systems, and motion is just part of that now, but increasingly more important, as I said, because we live in a video first society now. You know, all the media landscape is just video driven first and foremost. So they have to pay more and more attention and devote more and more resources to motion. And yes, it takes a lot of coordination between their internal teams, there's brand teams, and then partners like companies like us or others, kind of helping them fashion motion for the brand. So typically, yeah, it would take several months to get to something that can be rolled out across the organization, across the brand, and perform well on all those different touch points. Now,
Okay. Yeah, honestly, I mean, even a couple months to me sounds pretty fast. I would think it would take, man, like almost a year if you like want to depending on how elaborate, but yeah, I haven't really seen many.
Yeah.
I've seen some case studies, but it seems like that's something that's becoming more and more prevalent now.
It's not uncommon. You can find some good motion systems, out there. I think IBM has a really solid one. It kind of started with the Google material design. I think they were the first one to kind of like really codify motion in that way. And then now all the cool brands, all the brands that really gets it, are doing it. So there's a lot of examples, and I think we're going to see more and more of them, and also more in-depth as well, more sophisticated. So that's, I think, one of the ways that motion really matured over the last, 10, 15 years. It's great. It means there's a lot of opportunities for freelancers, because oftentimes, like, especially coming, from the freelance world, you're still thinking, okay, well, I can make a video, like an explainer or like a product thing or 60-second whatever animation, but that's just like the tip of the iceberg. Like, just so many more ways that motion can be used, and that brands today use motion throughout all those different touch points. It doesn't have to just be like one commercial, even within the apps. Like, if you think of a brand like Duolingo, for example, the language app, you've heard of it? Like obviously they use motion for marketing, for their advertising, but a lot of it is used in the app directly, right? So motion, is, again, it's part of the brand experience itself. Like, it used to be that the product was the brand experience in a way, but now, because we're in this video first society, then video or motion is part of the goods. It's part of the brand experience. And that's how a lot of people experience the brand first, is through motion. And so I think a lot of the savvy brands that get it, they understand that, and they understand that can create a lot of value, and a great way to differentiate from the competition, and make people kind of happy with the product.
Gotcha. Yeah. So then, as far as all this motion work that's being done for all these brands, brand experiences, I mean, what are some of the like the motion design trends that you've been seeing that is really exciting for you, and adversely other ones that you're probably a little worried about?
Yeah, correct. There's a lot of them. Probably one of the biggest ones on my radar right now is just the tools, the technology, of course, because there's such a demand for it now, for motion. Usually when there's demand, there's people that are able to fulfill that demand, and a lot of tools created to make it easier and easier to fulfill that demand. So just like we saw Adobe and After Effects and all that stuff getting really popular, there's so many more options now to create motion, and some really interesting tools coming up. I'm thinking of like, Cavalry and Rive or Spline and Womp, all those kind of like tools that take a different approach on how you can create motion. I think is really cool, especially if you add AI to the mix. I think we're gonna see a lot. I mean, yeah, it's gonna evolve very rapidly as we've seen. And it's, I don't know, in a way, it just reminds me of like back when we started, 10, 15 years ago, where with After Effects and Adobe, like there was this new way of creating motion. I think there's this new wave starting now with those new tools and AI, and it's just going to change the game again and create a lot of opportunities for newcomers to, make a place for themselves into the industry, into the space, and it's going to open a lot of opportunities to create something new with the way we do motion. To me, that's probably the biggest trend I see right now, the technology.
Yeah, so because I know before, at one point, the explainer video, the vector style explainer video was kind of like a big thing that a lot of people were doing. I mean, is there any kind of like specific trends that you're seeing nowadays that's kind of equivalent to that?
I think anything 3D right now, like the last like 5-6 years, as you said, we saw a lot of like vector stuff at first, and then a lot of like those like type of illustrations with characters, a little whimsical 2D vector driven or like hand drawn. Like we saw a lot of that for a long time. And then the last few years, I've definitely have a shift towards the 3D, and I think it's also enabled because of tools like Blender and C4D or whatever that makes it a lot easier to do that now. And then now it's interesting because you kind of see in some of those trends like the 3D on twos, like this stop motion vibe, like the Airbnb commercials from back, for example. Like, so you've got like the full-on 3D characters, but it's got like that little stop motion vibe to it. So it's interesting because it's this 3D modern vibe, but trying to give it like more of an organic feel as well, which makes perfect sense. So I kind of see that as a trend a little bit. And of course, AI is entering the chat right now with, I think we're seeing more and more AI stuff. A lot of it looks like crap for now. But I do think that it's getting better by the day, and it will probably create new styles. I imagine. I haven't seen any like one new cool trend or style that we can directly attribute to like, wow, this is because of AI. AI enabled this, and this is new trend, new style that looks good and it's going to be successful. But I do think it's going to come. I'm sure we're going to have some new ways of looking at video that was enabled by that, and that will be full-on trends for the next few years.
Gotcha. Yeah, because that's one thing I agree with you too. As far as the things that I've seen from AI, I mean, it's getting more impressive for sure. But I mean, have you seen any kind of really viable use cases for production that AI really benefits? Or I mean, are you seeing anything on that front?
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's kind of progressive. I wouldn't say like I've seen like a full-on video that's completely done by AIs that I'm blown away and I'm like, wow, this is I just need to push a button and I get my video. So it of course does not work like that at all. But I think what I've seen, the impact I've seen so far is like within the workflow. Like even us at Thinkmojo, like we've been using AI, experimenting with it, trying things out, and there's definitely multiple projects recently where we've had AI involved in it, and it definitely helped us a lot. Like on top of, I'm just thinking of like one example where we just needed to help a client with some stupid stuff, but they had some footage of somebody that they kind of wanted to look older, like live action footage, right? And said like, can you help us make this person like look older? We need it for like a few shots with it on our video. And then typically like to be able to do that like a few months or years ago, you would have, like pretty heavy on like visual effects, VFX, it would take hours, probably days to really get it to a place where it feels good. And honestly, through AI, we're just able to do it in just a matter of hours, really. So that's just one example of how we're using AI. Voice is another area where we've been able to ramp up production, like being able to clone voice for like some pickups, voiceover on our productions. And then of course, anything that has to do with generating ideas, mood boards, it's been, I think, across the board really helpful to put together some like, some quick concepts and brainstorm ideas and even like present that to clients. It's been super helpful.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I've heard of certain things here and there, but that's good to hear how you guys have been able to use it in some of your client work. So that's awesome. That's good to know.
I was gonna say that's just the beginning. I mean, like what we can see from. I know that a lot of the AI stuff that we're seeing right now, on the social media feeds and wherever, it just doesn't look really good. And usually you can spot it instantly because there's this like shine to it, and it just doesn't look so good. So it's almost like I mean, plainly is a turnoff right now. But it's because those are the videos that you see that have been fully generated through AI. But I think where it's going to help a lot of companies and studios right now, it's already helping them and us right now is within the workflows and within pieces of the overall commercial or piece of content that you create. So you're still gonna shoot what you need to shoot or like create whatever, mostly through custom animation, but you're gonna use AI to enhance parts of it or change or edit some of it, and you're not gonna be able to see it in the final result. It's just that it's helped you enhance it or go faster in it. It still looks the same awesomeness as you were able to do before. It's just that it just amplified the work for you.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good to know. Yes, I mean, speaking of social media and, being able to spot AI because it has a very specific look. I mean, as far as social media and artists sharing their work, I mean, how do you think that landscape has changed as far as motion designers being able to find their unique voice?
Yeah, it's interesting because with social networks like this, it's great because in a way it just gives an opportunity for anybody to get out there and then getting discovered, right? It just makes discovery much more democratized, I guess. So that is great for newcomers and juniors trying to enter the field. What's tricky is that at the same time, because you're lowering the barriers to entry, that means that it's also harder to stand up because you're so many more in competition with so many more people. So that's what's hard. I think what I've seen work is that when there's a new channel being open, that's where if you are a newcomer at that time, that's sort of your chance to get a bit of visibility before everybody else catches up. So let's say we saw that, with at first Dribbble was kind of the place. You had Vimeo and then Dribbble motion designers started posting work on Dribbble. Some of them got really popular there. And then I think Instagram sort of got good at that. And so some new ones, new freelancers or artists got popular on Instagram, and then it was TikTok. So every time there's a new platform, there's a chance to get discovered, faster than others if you jump on it. But it is, it's difficult, especially because a lot of it is driven by algorithms. And algorithms tend to have preferences in what is shown because it's all about the clicks. So it sort of encourages, it's everything about the style and then the show, how cool you can make it look. But what's tricky is that it doesn't really show the process. It doesn't show as a freelancer how you're thinking about the piece you're making. So it's good for likes, but it doesn't mean that it's going to translate into you getting hired because you still need to prove that, okay, I can make that style, but can you think strategically? Can you are you easy to work with? All that stuff doesn't really show through those pieces. So it's just only one component out of it's one piece out of the whole pie, I guess.
Okay, so would you say that it would be beneficial for any artists that are posting their artwork on there to show either, some sort of the process, whether it be, the wireframes or maybe sketches, or something like that, are you saying?
Yeah, I think probably from the studio perspective, and we hire and we work with a lot of talented people. So the way I would typically look at it is, yes, style execution is probably the first thing that we notice because it's so visual, right? So if you want to stand out, you definitely need to have some really cool stuff, to show on there. That's what's gonna catch our eye, right? So once I've noticed that, it's like, oh, this is a really cool piece. Like, I wonder who made this. Then I start looking for consistency. Like, okay, is this artist or designer, is this just the one really good thing that they were able to do, but the rest looks like crap? Or no, actually, it's like all of the stuff they post is really good. All right, so now I want to find out more. You've passed that threshold. The next step is like, okay, well, let's see how they think. Like, is there anything about their process or the behind the scenes of how they made that piece that kind of gives me a peek of like how they work, how their approach work, and that's really important for me as a studio owner because I want to know that if I brought this person on into our workflow, are they going to be able to work with it? You know, do they, as they used to be working, collaborating with other people, all that kind of stuff. It's what you see usually in the behind the scenes. And then after that, it would be, you know, once you've past that second threshold, then it would become about the soft skills of, you know, communicating, being reliable, being on time, being a team player. All that stuff is really hard to show through social media posts and things like this. So again, think of it as like, yes, the visual is just gonna catch attention, but then after that, if you're able to show some of your process, so show how you work, maybe give a little bit about yourself, so that we can see that you're a good person, you're gonna be easy to work with and fun to bring onto the project. All of that stuff would for sure help you differentiate from the masses.
That's good to know. Okay. Yeah, because I do feel like I have been seeing like a little bit more process because people show either like, you know, the nulls or the wireframes in their projects. So that's good to know that you're touching on like soft skills, which is another, you know, tricky thing to learn and another skill that you don't learn in art school. So
yeah. Well, you have to because it's that's what's hard about it too. Because there's so many talented designers now. I mean, it's crazy. Again, talk about a shift from like 15 years ago to now. Like motion design in that way was kind of new at the time. Not a lot of studios or people were into that field, not nearly as much. But now there's so many people from all corners of the world and so many talented people every day. It's just like, how do you even, you know, choose to work with someone? It's really hard to stand out. And unfortunately, it's part of business. It's not just, you know, you don't get successful just by showing cool stuff. You actually have to figure out a way to market yourself and build relationships and show what you can do, not just on the visual standpoint, but also from like being a team player and then understanding the strategy behind the brand and the campaigns and all that stuff matters just as much, especially when you are in a very crowded industry like we are right now.
yeah, totally. Yeah. So speaking of the industry and stuff, I mean, is there anyone in particular as far as artists or studios that you find are doing like really interesting work or even generous work?
Definitely, yeah. Oh man, there's as I said, so many talented people, and then so many super awesome studios. I think that's what's been really cool over the last few years. I feel like every day I see a new piece of content of motion design. I'm like, who did this? It's like a new studio I've never heard of, and then I look at their stuff, like, oh my god, this is blowing me away. This is super cool, and this every day is like it's amazing to see. Same thing with like individual artists and designers as well. So. I think for me, it's some that stand out. And it's also because, you know, I'm a studio owner, so I've got the business, you know, view of things as well. But I like studios that are kind of specialized or like have a very specific, they fulfill like a very specific need. So I can think of a few. Talking about motion systems, for example, Vuko. I don't know if you've heard of Vuko. Is one of them. I super love I think they did a fantastic job with their site and the way they present themselves and position themselves. I think is very smart. So that's a great case for specialization. Another one that I really love as well is a studio called BN. If you've heard of them, you know, they do great work, but what's really unique about them is that they've taken this approach of being positioned about the studio that really cares about inclusivity. And so in everything that they do, they approach work to make sure that it's very inclusive, it's very accessible, and it's done in a way that feels really fresh and smart. And there's a real mission. It's very mission driven in that way. And I think this is another great way to differentiate in a saturated, you know, marketplace. These are cool. What else? I think. Yeah, I think that's probably the top two that I would say. And of course, there's all the backs of the world are making incredible work. It's just like, you know, they're on their own world. But I actually, one thing I would say about those kind of studios, I mean, first of all, they are massive and they've been dominating the industry for, 10 years, plus. But I think what a lot of people get wrong about the studios, they're thinking that the reason they are successful is because they make really cool commercials, like basically when they work with clients, they have whatever, all the money you can get, and they're gonna pour that into production and get it's the best you can get, basically, from a motion standpoint, even though a lot of other studios can do the same level of quality now. But I think what's really amazing about a studio like Black is that it's all the infrastructure around it, because people don't understand that, like, to stay at that level, it goes well beyond motion. Like, crafting good motion, yes, it's hard, but it's kind of a table stakes now. Like, a lot of studios can produce at that level. It's not that crazy. What's really hard is to stay on top, and to enable this, when you have a team of like 500 people or 600 people, and putting all the operations in place, and marketing that. And I mean, it's a ton of work, probably even more challenging than the creative work itself. And I think a lot of people, I think it gets lost on a lot of people on how hard that can be to do,
That's actually a really good point you bring up, though, because yes, I agree. There's just seems to be great work popping up left and right. And it's just like, man, it's like the competition, everything's, all the competition is rising, I guess, in qualities. And the thing is, so like you said, certain places are doing certain things. So Vuko is actually the very first thing that came to mind when it comes to motion design systems, because they're always posting those. And then another one that comes to mind is a guy by the name of Connor Henkel. I think he does Coliseum. He does like a lot of sports graphics for stadiums. And he's always showing us on how he designs stuff for certain boards, different screens. So do you feel like you almost have to specialize in a market that's kind of saturated or like really competitive?
I wouldn't say that you have to specialize, in my opinion, but you could still be a generalist and then be very successful. I mean, if you look at Block, technically they are a generalist. If anything, they're becoming even more of a generalist with their new entity, Residence, where they bring on specialized mini agencies to be part of their network, and so that, which basically means they can basically do anything, any kind of work they can really do. It's just the most generalized thing you can possibly do. So it can still work. It's just that when you're not at that level, and when you operate in a very crowded marketplace, then by default, when it's saturated like this, then it's hard to differentiate. You sort of motion design, I think we have to face it, it's become sort of a commodity, like it's not that hard to make really good motion. As we said, a lot of studios are able to get to that level. So if you want to be able to differentiate and stand out and get business, then you might want to consider, okay, well, what's so special about us? How can we specialize in a way that not a lot of people are doing? What kind of value can we bring to the table that only us can do? So in my opinion, good motion design is just your ticket to entry into the industry. But to really be successful and sustainable, you're going to have something else beyond that. Yes, you're going to need to master motion design, but you're also going to need to master your business skills, operations, market yourself properly. And then to market yourself properly, you need to think about, okay, well, what kind of flavor do we give to our own studio? Like, what do we do differently that's not commonly found, in the marketplace, or that nobody else can do as well as we can. Vuko is a great example of that.
So okay, that's great to know. That's great points you touched on. So then at that point, then, if you do some great work, I mean, how is it that, do you work with either marketing coaches or business coaches, or how is it that you market yourself specifically, or how do you tackle that?
Yeah, that's not an easy one. Yeah, I think mentoring is great. You're right. There's a few consultancy and then people that can help a lot with that. I mean, I know there's Joel Pilger, who's making some good buzz right now. He's been helping a lot of studios going through the I guess teaching business acumen to studios and artists and designers and freelancers. People like Joe Nash as well, who used to be an exec at Buck and State, and who does that. And the thing is that, and I've gone through that myself, is like there's a lot that you don't know, you don't even know. That's the thing. When you get into this field, I remember thinking like, oh, okay, yeah, it's this myth of like, if we do great work, then the demand, like the work, the projects will follow, and it's not really, maybe it was true 10, 15 years ago when this whole field was new, but now there's way too many people doing great work for it to be true. Like, okay, you're going to have to, something else going to give for you to get business consistently. And that's where it makes sense to start educating yourself about, business, marketing, operations, because that's where the difference is made. That's how companies, studios with high caliber are able to be successful time and again. It's because they've gone through the motion of like understanding business, understanding strategy, understanding the marketplace, and when you start getting into this, then you realize, as I said, that there's a lot that you don't know, you didn't know, you didn't even know. I would definitely encourage you to like think beyond just motion.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've definitely heard that said, but it's good to hear you reiterate that. And yeah, it's just something really interesting. I just wonder if that's going to be another wave of, I guess, courses that people are going to take, because I feel like I've heard this said so many times. It's like, it's not just about making great work. So many people can make great work, and now it's about relationships and marketing. And I just feel like that's another muscle that we have to train. And I feel like the resources aren't really as abundant for that. So hopefully there'll be a surgence of that.
Yeah, I think they will. You're right, because like obviously there's a lot more motion designers now. The field has sort of matured. A lot of brands understand motion and have been bring this as part of their marketing mix. And you're right, there's not a lot of resources on the business side of things. But as things have matured, I think we're gonna see more and more of these resources and courses and mentors and consultants kind of helping lift up the game. We're going to have to, because, we've got almost like too much of a supply right now. So when that's the case, like you've looked for ways to differentiate. And when this is when you start getting help, and somebody's going to have to build businesses for that, to provide that help. So I bet we'll see more and more resources that way.
Yeah. I think another person that comes to mind too is Chris Do, because I know I see a lot of clips of him speaking to freelancers and how they have to basically,
totally,
I guess, do value-based. Yeah.
He helped a lot of actually, it's funny because I was going to mention Chris Do earlier as well, because he was part of the very first wave. Like, so if you backtrack 15 years ago, and if you recall, he had a studio which was called, I forget the name of the studio now. Yes, Line. So it was a pretty successful studio at the time. They won a bunch of Emmy awards, and they were thriving. And then came along After Effects and Adobe, the motion design. And as I was saying earlier, all the budgets for like big broadcast commercials were starting to go down, because now you could start making the same kind of quality with just a laptop and a copy of After Effects and a couple guys, right? And then Chris Do kind of like saw that happening, and then they were used to be working on the bigger, big budget commercial, music video, stuff like that. And it starts seeing like, oh, there's a shift happening. And now what we've been able to do for like, I don't know, $200,000 or $300,000, now some youngsters are able to do that for like, a fraction of the price. This is no good, and this might be the end of our business. So he had a choice there. It's either you sort of evolve, to deal with it and adapt and change your business model to keep going, or you say, you know what, I don't want to mess with this. I don't, I don't have the stamina for it. We're just gonna pivot and change the business completely, which is the direction he took, and said, you know what, that business is dead. In the future, there's an expiration date on it. Let's just go into something completely different. And that's when he launched the Future and then consultancy business. So full circle now.
It's funny. It's crazy to think that I moved out here to California to go to art school. And actually I took a class that was called Studio Visits, and we visited Blind Studio. And I remember thinking at the time, this was about 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I remember thinking like, man, this is insane. This is like these studios doing like the best work. And it's interesting to see how things have shifted over that time. And how, like you were just saying, he was saying how they used to get projects all the time just for title cards. And it would be like, 5-6-figure budgets. And now it's just like, an intern can do it, or someone can do it just for a few $100. So it's interesting to see how things have changed. But speaking on that though, I mean, so what do you personally, what do you think the industry is going to be in the next, 5 years, which it sounds like it's such a long time, but it's crazy.
No, I think it's a great segue, because like, I think it's basically happening again. Like that shift that happened 10, 15 years ago with Chris Do, I think we're at the beginning of a new cycle with AI, meaning that what we've been able to do the last few years, that would, we would be able to engage with clients for like thousands of dollars on making this piece. AI is going to be able to do that for a fraction of it in the next few months and years. So we're going to have to adapt and evolve in the same way. It's almost like there was, like 10, 15 years ago, it was the start of a new wave of with motion design, coming up, getting popular, and then doing things in a different way. And now we're closing that cycle, that first wave of 15 years, and now we're starting a new one with AI coming into play. And I think it's definitely gonna change the game, whether we want it or not. Unfortunately, it's I know it's a very polarizing subject. There's people very anti-AI and people very pro-AI. I think if we remove ourselves from the situation, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, it's here to stay and it's going to impact our industry. So in my opinion, you have to make that same choice. It's either you don't want to put up with it and it's like, fuck that, I'm out, I'm going to do something else. Or you say, okay, well, it's here to stay, so we just need to evolve and adapt, That's definitely going to be the biggest trend. And so I think the 5 years from now, I think the industry is going to be much more driven by AI, but maybe in a way that, because it's weird right now because we say like AI is this, AI is that, and it's just temporary, right? Because eventually it's going to be part of it, all products de facto, like without us even knowing. So we won't even have to say AI, just like when the internet came, or like 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, before the social networks and mobile, when it was the beginning, the brands would have to say like, well, now we have a website, or we have a phone, or go check us out on our mobile site or on our Instagram or Facebook. That was all new. And we had to say that for years, like, oh, check us out on Facebook. But now you don't even have to say it. By default, if you're a brand, you're going to have a mobile website. You don't have to say, go to the mobile site, or you don't have to say, go check us out on Instagram. It's a given. AI is going to be the same way. You're not going to have to say it's AI powered. Who cares? AI is in it. We just expect it to be AI powered, So I think the software like Adobe, the whole Adobe suite and all those tools, they will have AI in it by default, right? And so I think the tools will just be much more powerful. It'll be just seamless and integrated, and we'll just be able to do a lot more things that we're able to do right now. And I think in a way, it just kind of brings me back to the early years of the iPhone when the App Store came out, that was kind of new. And then that sort of gave ways to the Airbnbs and Google Maps and Ubers of the world. There was no way to kind of predict where it was going to go at first. But you just knew, there's going to be a ton of new cool applications for it. You just couldn't tell exactly what. We couldn't predict, like, was this going to be an Airbnb and Uber? Like, no, nobody knew. It just happened. And I think it's just the same thing with AI. It's going to enable the creation of apps that we can't even understand or imagine, right now. It's pretty anxious to see what it's going to be. And hopefully it's going to be for the better, not the worse. But that is, who knows?
Yeah, to be determined. That's really funny you say that, though. That's true, because now no one even thinks about, where the internet, like, it's funny how people refer to it as the World Wide Web.
Right. Yeah.
Obviously, no one says that anymore. And it's funny how now Google, like the internet turned into Google, and people just say, oh, just Google that. So I wonder what the equivalent of AI will be. Like, people are saying, oh, I chat GPT this. So I wonder what the next wave of that will be.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, just within the span of 15 years, it's amazing to me that huge, enormous companies, the early days of the internet was I think Yahoo and AOL and all those were the Googles of the time, right? And then within just a few years, they were completely overtaken by the new Googles and, Facebook and all that stuff. And who's to say that, 10 years from now, these guys will be dead, and then there will be new companies that we don't even know of that will have taken over the world. So it's hard to predict, that far along, especially with a technology like AI that advances so rapidly, faster than we've seen before. So it's very hard to predict how it's gonna turn out, in my opinion. Yeah,
it's interesting. It definitely feels like we're in a transitionary period where things are shifting, but we don't know where it's going to be. But it's exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. But I mean, as far as you and Thinkmojo in your studio, what do you foresee? I mean, are there new things that you're pursuing now, or how do you see you guys in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm definitely more of the mind that like we need to evolve and adapt rather than just bury our heads in the sand. As far as is concerned, I would say that okay, the one thing that is not going to change, no matter the tool and technology, is the need for storytelling and explaining things. Like when you have a new technology or when you have a new product that you need to make people aware of and understand what it does and the value it creates, that's never gonna go away. That need is universal and it's timeless. And whether you have a PowerPoint presentation or whatever tool you have, 50 years ago, they still had to market their product and explain to people why this product was good for them. And 50 years from now, you'd still have to explain why they need to get iPhone model, 150, So that need is never gonna change. It's only the tool and the way we approach it that is going to change. So, that's the way I approach it with the business. And yes, that means we're going to need to learn new tools and then start integrating that into our workflows. But I don't know. To me, it's just like I'm more in love with the problem solving part of it, like trying to figure out a way for us to make that connection happen between a brand and an audience, and whatever means necessary to make that happen, we'll take it. I know it sucks for I have empathy. I understand like for, some artists that have really dedicated years and years to the craft, it is kind of, heartbreaking because now it means that you might need to learn a completely new way to get that same outcome, or that may be replaced by a technology that can do the same thing in super quick. So that part super duper sucks. And that means you're going to have to evolve in a way that you don't necessarily want to. But from a business standpoint, at least our mission and the problem we're solving, it's a bit different because it's less about the craft itself and more about solving problems. And I think to us, that's another thing. I'm sorry to go on a tangent here, but I think a lot of, especially juniors and newcomers getting into the field sometimes are mistaken. They come from art school, for example, or wherever, and they have these ambitions, which is great to have ambition, but thinking like it's going to be I'm going to put my art in there and I'm going to see if thinking of like design as art basically, and like advertising and doing your thing, it's just like this artful thing. When it really is not. Like design in business has a purpose. Your goal is to use art or whatever means necessary to design something that will create a solution and fulfill a need for people, right? So the art is in the service of a certain goal, whereas true art, it doesn't have a goal that way. Its only goal is to provoke a reaction, emotion, thinking, but it's not trying to sell you anything. Design is very different that way. Design is actually you're trying to get people to do something in exchange for money, right? So when you get into the field, if you come into design, I hate to break it to you, but it's not about the art. It's about, making that transaction, making people see the value in things. And so that, you have to be okay with that fact if you want to, be successful at it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great words of wisdom there. Yeah, because that's something that I've learned when I first stepped into this industry. And I'm seeing that there has to be a reason behind it. I mean, like you just said, yeah, you explained it great to where it has design serves a purpose and art doesn't have to. It's just to create a reaction. So that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. What's your take on it? Yeah, like how do you see the whole thing evolve? Like have you played around with the different models and tools? How do you feel about it as a designer?
Honestly, yeah. I mean, I think, like you said, at the end of the day, we're telling stories, but I think I'm just seeing it as just another tool in the arsenal belt. But to your point, also, it does replicate certain styles, which it does suck for the people who have dedicated so many years to develop that style, and now it's just being instantly replicated. But at the end of the day, it's just a tool. We're communicating, we're making stories, we're helping other companies achieve their success or their marketing goals. So I think it's just, me personally, I just feel like it's something that's going to integrate into what we're doing. The ultimate goal at the end of the day is not going to change. So certain things are kind of intimidating, might seem unethical in some ways. But,
for sure.
yeah, I don't have a super negative outlook on it. I think it's just yeah, I'm a nostalgia junkie, and it's just crazy us talking about me visiting blind and having now if I consider nostalgia because now they've changed so much since then. But you know, but things change and you just kind of evolve. So I think I don't necessarily have a bad viewpoint on it.
Yeah, I try to not attach like feelings to it. Like I could see both sides, and right now I'm like, yeah, I'm as you said earlier, I'm sort of equally excited about the opportunities it creates, as I am, worried in a sense. Like, I mean, yeah, it's anxiety provoking. Even as a studio like us, yeah, where we say, okay, we want to integrate those tools into our workflows, but it's hard. We need to relearn the way we do things, and we know it's impacting the way we're going to be doing business. We know it's going to impact the budgets coming our way. A lot of brands are going to be thinking like, well, we could do this with my intern on AI now, and like, so what are we setting? So it does create a lot of like worries in a way. So yeah, it's a tough mental battle, and not even mentioning all the ethics behind it. As you said, there's some the ways it's been made can be shady at times. I do think that this is only temporary, and then obviously as a society we'll have to figure that out, and there's going to be a lot of cases where just like for the music industry and back in the days with like Napster and Spotify and like, yeah, it changes the rules, and Uber and the taxis. I mean, like anytime you introduce a new technology, then the laws and the rules have to change and adapt to it. And I think we haven't gone through that with AI yet, and we're just at the beginning of it. And so hopefully by the end of the process, things will be figured out and a little more fair for it to everybody. But the technology, I mean, it's here to stay. I mean, no matter what, you can't really put a stop to that, in my opinion.
Honestly, I'm really curious to see what is going to be evolve out and emerge out of this, because at that time, like you go back to Napster. I remember that time when it kind of really changed the music landscape. But then when Facebook came out, that completely changed the way like society interacted with each other. So now AI, I'm just wondering like, okay, what is this going to do? So maybe some behemoth new conglomerate corporation will be birthed out of that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
What's funny? I just I went onto I just popped up into one of my feeds earlier today, and this is so meta on a high level thing. So it was this. I guess it's a new trend on TikTok. Some people are making videos like with real humans, like whatever people imitating how AI makes videos. Remember the early days of AI when you would generate a video and then like a person would have like 3 arms and then they would kind of move like in a really weird way. And so now you have people recreating this with like real humans in it, and it looks really funny. And it's like we've gone full circle on like AI originally imitating humans and now humans imitating AI, and it's just a really funny thing to think about, I think.
The ones where it's like their interpretation, they're just trying to mimic out like the actions that the AI generation does, and they're just doing it like
it looks when you look at it, it looks like at first you think it's a bad AI video of like two people like doing whatever, and then you look a little closer, it's like, oh wait a minute, actually it's not AI generated, it's just actual human pretending to be AI, and then it looked really messed up with like another arm growing, and then all of a sudden you change angle and then like the head is like facing the other way, you don't know how, and it's just really well done, and it's kind of a new trend, and I think it's hilarious because it's just coming like full circle, like the AI, sort of takes over humans, creatively, and then now the humans come back at it and like put their own spin to it, and I love that. That's the sort of thing that I think you can't really predict, and I hopefully it's just like back when the photography was introduced into the world and what it did to painting and art, because of the ability to snap a picture and have a perfect representation of your scene. You didn't have to paint things in the same way, so artists, painters, they had to adapt, and that's how like the more abstract kind of work, the impressionist, Picasso, that stuff, modern arts and painting came along, is because you don't need to like repaint stuff with high fidelity. The photo can do that. So let's use painting as a different source of art and make things like look way weirder, right? So my hope is that AI will kind of create that in human creativity where, okay, AI got this part, they can do it better than any human. So us as human, let's do something different, that's new, that's never been done, and hopefully this will give ways to trends that are kind of crazy and that we have no idea of, right now what it's gonna be. I think I'm very excited and anxious to see what that's gonna be.
It's funny. The things that you're touching on just makes me think about. I just feel at the end of the day, I think we all have a need for human connection. And like you said, it's the problems that we're solving. And I feel like AI might alter some things, but I feel like at the end of the day, me personally, maybe this is just my wishes, but I just feel like the human connection is one thing that can't be replaced. Like no AI is going to be able to replace that. It can probably mimic conversations, but having a human connection interaction, I feel like cannot be replaced. I feel like that's one thing that I've learned in the pandemic. Having worked remote made me realize how much I miss being in person and having that in-person collaboration. So I don't know. I think that's maybe my hopefulness, that I just feel like, we're always going to need to be connected somehow. So maybe that will be the saving grace of everything.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, maybe that'll be the silver linings. Sometimes I think about this where it's funny because AI is, so, back in the days, all the manual workers, all the factories and the robots and the machines sort of like replacing on the tractor kind of replaced a lot of manual farmers and people, right? So it put a lot of people out of jobs in that way. And then it kind of gave way to more of the knowledge kind of work, like the office workers, blue collar, white collars and computer type of work. And then now with AI being able to do a lot of the tasks you would be able to do on a computer, it's going to replace a lot of people, knowledge workers, in that way. So maybe it's going to be the reverse where now we're going to need more people doing manual work, like physical work that AI can't touch because it's, it's not computing. So maybe it'll create more like people that went out of jobs because of AI. Maybe they will start their own businesses and, I don't know, open more restaurants or open more physical things in the real world that will create, at the end of the day, more human connections because it's going to be so physical and outside of the computer world, So I don't know, it'll be interesting. I'm just saying, like, it's hard to predict, and sometimes you'd be surprised the creative, the human genius and the ingenuity when it comes to creativity. So I don't know. We'll see how it shakes out.
Man, yeah, I know we can go on another conversation with that whole topic, but well, I mean, seeing what happens, I know we will all be curious to see, what you guys are going to be doing. But I mean, this is really awesome. I really appreciate you taking time to chat with us about all this. And so I'll be sure to link everything in the show notes, but is there any way folks can get connected with you or check you out?
Yeah, I mean, check us out at thinkmojo.com on our website if you want to see some of our work. And then we're mostly present on LinkedIn, so feel free to follow us on there and even connect to me, and feel free to send me DMs. And always happy to talk shop and help wherever I can. And, meeting new people in the community is awesome. So, thank you so much for having me. It was awesome to have a chat, and then hopefully we'll do even more in the future.
Thanks again to Yann for making the time to chat with us. I really loved that convo and thought he had some amazing insight. So we learned about what it's like to start and run a studio and how it's evolved over time with industry changes. A big takeaway here was how freelancers and studios need to distinguish themselves in a landscape that's much more crowded and competitive. Great motion design is much more abundant these days, so it's really important to distinguish yourself by showing your process and being more personal in your marketing. Only showing good work isn't enough to sustain long-term. Like we've heard before, it's also important to work on those soft skills and maintain those good relationships. Regarding the hot topic of AI, we learned that the main concept of storytelling will never change. It's just the tools and process that's currently shifting. So just like rotoscope artists that had less work due to those tools becoming more efficient, we're coming upon another shift where certain tools are evolving and we're just adjusting and acclimating to a new wave of tools to help us with our craft. Overall, I think this was a great convo to have with Yann and hear his great perspective during this pivotal time in our industry. Be sure to check out Yann's studio, which I'll link in the show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next chat.